Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at writing for different purposes. Now this is lesson 2 in our 16-week series, and we're going to look at informing, advising and how to persuade. Now if you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe, it really does help us out when you do so. Learning recap. Look at the statements about last lesson and identify which are true and which are false. So firstly we have them. There are only 2 assessments for each level. Informal language is used in professional settings. Functional skills can help you with further study. Rhetorical questions don't require a verbal response. And speaking and listen isn't really that important. So while you're thinking about those ones, also try and stretch and challenge yourself. So did we do a practice reading skills or practice writing skills during our last lesson? If you haven't checked that out already, please do check it out. We upload a new lesson every single week over the next 16 weeks. Now if you want to pause the video here and go through the questions by yourself, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and look at the answers in the next part of the video. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the correct answers. So on the left hand side then we have our true statements, and on the right we have our false ones. So firstly then, functional skills can help you with further study. Now this is really the best thing about functional skills for me, because what it does is it helps you to get the foundation that you need in terms of all the kind of technical skills within English to help you actually progress further, and not just further within English either. If you're at college, for example, and you're thinking about taking a course, doesn't matter what that course is, generally speaking there will be an element of speaking, writing, reading or communication, all of which are things that we work on within the Functional Skills English course. Secondly, for our true statement, we have rhetorical questions don't require a verbal response. Now rhetorical questions are a really good thing to use when you're doing your writing and also when you're doing your presentations for speaking and listening, because what it does is it allows you to ask a question, not get a response, but it allows the audience to actually internalize what you're trying to say and really think about the message that you're trying to convey to them. For our false statements then, there are only 2 assessments for each level. Of course this is wrong. There is 3 assessments for each level, and even things like speaking and listening, if you've already completed speaking and listening for level 1 and you complete level 1, that's fantastic, but you would still need to do speaking and listening again when you move on to level 2. So there's 3 elements, as we went through before in our first lesson: a reading assessment, a writing assessment and a speaking and listening assessment. Next, our other false statement is informal language is used in professional settings. So when we're talking about informal language, we mean things like slang or colloquial language, to use the more sophisticated term. You wouldn't use this in a professional setting because it's not the kind of thing we deem appropriate for a workplace. Generally in a workplace or professional setting, we tend to speak a bit more sophisticated than we do in like our everyday normal lives. And the final one, speaking and listening isn't really that important. This isn't the case. Speaking and listening for me is one of the most important ones, because it's about developing those skills for things like interviews, communicating with other people, and just being able to communicate effectively in day-to-day life, which I think we can all agree is a very important skill to have. So now that we went through that, I'd like just to stretch and challenge yourself and think of one or more question that you have about the course. We're still very early on in the process, so if there is anything that you're not too sure about, now's the time to go ahead and start thinking about those questions. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to understand what is meant by inform, advise and persuade, interpret information effectively, and finally, apply your understanding to a written example. So what is meant by tone? This is going to be one of the key things we're going to think about when we're talking about the 3 different purposes of writing. So what I'd like to do is look at the statements and discuss how each writer is feeling from the given statement. So if we look carefully about the actual tone that's coming across on this first one, we can kind of work through it together. So the teacher is late to the lesson again. Now that by itself doesn't necessarily give off much of a tone, but when you think about how we read it and how we interpret that, it does give us something about how the person's actually feeling during that moment. Now the teacher is late to the lesson again. Now because we have that pause there with the comma and we have the word again, we can infer from that this is something that is a regular occurrence and we get a slight sense that the person saying this is a little bit annoyed or irritated in that moment. Secondly, we have what is the point of studying maths? I mean, really? Again, taken just by the face value of it, it's hard to actually interpret the tone, but we could definitely get in a kind of sense of sarcasm here, especially when you say, I mean, really. This is very kind of colloquial, typical phrase that someone might say to express disbelief that they can't understand why someone would want to study maths. Thirdly, it is really an amazing opportunity you have. Now think about the word choice that the writer's chosen here. We have words like amazing, which is a really positive adjective to use as well. So clearly we know from the actual tone they're coming across with that they're very encouraging. We don't know what they're encouraging about necessarily, but we can tell from the word choice there that they're being quite positive in this instance. Next we have, you must do this, it's the best option for you. Now whenever someone uses the word like must, this is what we call a bossy verb or an imperative. This is when someone's making a demand. Now we can tell from the tone, whenever you are demanding someone do something, you're being quite forceful and borderline a little bit aggressive as well. You are smart, considerate, and always make the right decision. So it's important when you consider tone, it's not always as simple as are they happy or are they sad. This person seems to be quite thoughtful, quite caring, and you can tell that by the word choice. They're being very complimentary here by using words like smart, considerate, and they clearly have a lot of faith in the person by saying they always make the right decision. So when you think about the kind of information you have there, it's all about interpreting it. Can you understand just from the information that you're given what they're trying to convey in the broader sense? Can you read between the lines and understand what the writer's fully trying to convey to us? So when we think about this, you need to think about what kind of language techniques have been used. If you're not too sure about that, don't worry about it too much. It's something we're really going to jump into when we look at our third lesson next week. Class feedback. What is tone and how is it conveyed in writing? So hopefully based on those examples, we'd all be kind of on the same page here. So tone is generally the mood that is conveyed through the word choice of the writer. This is often conveyed through the choice of adjectives to describe someone or something. So key term, adjectives. Now these are some of the fundamental words. Being able to use these appropriately will really help to convey your message to the actual reader. So it's about picking out the right word for the right situation. Sometimes you can use general adjectives, so you could say something is good or something is bad, but it's not really conveying much about that situation. Why is it bad? How bad is it? Is it terrible? Is it awful? Is it atrocious? So it's about identifying the very best word to communicate the most effectively to your audience. Now that we've thought about the tone, now we're going to think about the different purposes of writing. So you have three different purposes of writing. We have writing to inform. So this is simply where the information is given so that the reader can make an informed decision themselves. This will appear in forms of writing such as a leaflet, a report, or even narrative writing as well. Secondly, we have writing to advise. So this is where we give advice to the audience, where the writer has an informed view, where they express their views on a given topic. And writing to persuade. This is where the writer is trying to convince or influence the reader so that they come round to their way of thinking. So when I look at these different forms, or the different purposes of writing I should say, writing to inform, you're just giving the information. Writing to advise is you're kind of giving your own view on it. And then writing to persuade is a little bit more forceful. You're trying to convince them towards your way of thinking. So teacher's top tip there, good thing to think about when you're thinking about your writing assessment. Make sure you know the purpose of the task. So is it asking you to inform someone, advise them, or is it asking them to persuade them? And really knowing this is going to help you to understand, okay, what kind of tone do I need to use in my writing? How forceful do I need to be? And what kind of techniques would be most effective to get my message across? Okay, if you made it this far, then thank you very much for listening. If you're interested in watching part 2 of this lesson, then please do check out the next video in our installment that should be uploaded straight away. If you need any additional support or help, the new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, leave us a comment below, like and subscribe, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Remember, whenever you are doing work like this, it's really important that you get feedback from a teacher and make sure that you're on the right path. Best of luck, guys, with all your work and revision in the future. Bye bye.